Hit Zero, a zombie game and a travel game at the same time. The players in this game are traveling across America. It just so happens that they have decided to take this family trip during the zombie apocalypse. So each player will be the leader of a group of survivors, and you're trying to keep them alive for as long as possible and to remain alive yourself for as long as possible. A game by Martin Wallace. Production wise, this is a very interesting game because all the components look like they have been made out of actually trash, garbage, out of the kind of stuff that is around during a zombie apocalypse. For example, tokens for resources look like caps from bottles. Cards look like advertisement cards from restaurants or playing cards that are being repurposed, and everything is dirty and sad and gloomy looking. Very, very nice. I know I say it's sad and gloomy, yes, but very appropriate to the theme. This is a game based on an action mechanics, which is something unusual. The connection with the zombie theme is not apparent to me at first sight, nor a second or a third, but somehow it works. So here you have your own survivor, your own heroic self, and a group of survivors traveling with you. Each player also has a pawn that is placed on this board here at the beginning of the game. And here, the other players. Now, you have these caps here representing adrenaline, ammo, and fuel, and these you'll use them to perform actions during the game, but they're also the currency that you spend during the auction phase, which is the phase where players decide the order in which they will pick the paths that they will be traveling on. Here you have a deck of cards that are divided in different levels. The ones at the bottom are harder. They have much more deadly stuff than the ones on top. And these cards are used to form 4 paths at the beginning of each turn. 4 paths formed of 2 cards. So each pair that you see here is one of the possible paths that the players will be traveling on. We are showing the game as if we had 4 players playing. Now, the players during this phase at the beginning of the turn, first they look at the paths, and not all paths are born equal. Some paths are particularly desirable because they do not have much bad stuff on them, and maybe they have some resources that you can collect, and some other paths are particularly deadly. Looking at the paths actually before we talk about the auction phase. The cards indicate the number of resources and the type of resources that you collect if you choose that path. So if I were to travel on this path, I would collect 1, 2, 3 fuel tokens and 2 ammo tokens. Also, we get a victory point just for showing up. How cool is that? This path even cooler because it gives me a lot of ammo and more victory points and a token. In this case, a Molotov token that I take with me. These tokens do not have any immediate effect. They are sort of like continuity markers. That means that later on there may be cards whose effect activates if you have a certain token. And some of these tokens have like surprises. I don't want to show you all the tokens, and I do not want to tell you what they do, but I can tell you that some tokens look like they're going to do something good for you, and then it turns out that a certain card triggers a negative effect based on that token. But you have that sense of continuity given by the tokens. So if I choose this path, collect resources, get victory points, and also take that token. Will it be good or bad? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Here again we see other examples of things. If there's a text, you simply do what it says there. Take the map token, take the steering wheel token, or I should say the bus token. Again, more victory points, and here we see, of course, our enemies, the people, if people is the right word, that we're trying to avoid, the zombies. When you see that icon, that means that you will have to fight against the zombies, and you will have to fight the number of zombies indicated by the number in the icon. So when players look at the paths, some paths will immediately stand out as more desirable than others. And this is, and the disabled paths are, of course, the ones that you want to travel on. So you're going to have an auction to decide who gets to do that. Players will commit to spend a certain number of tokens to determine their order. For example, I say, I'm yellow, I want to spend 2 resources in this auction. And then red cannot spend the same number, and red says, I'm going to do 3, and blue says, I'm going to do 4, and green says, I'm gonna, okay, going last, I guess. And then players can go around and they can bid more until all players have passed. Suppose that actually then green says, no, I want to go here. Then yellow has a chance of going again. And you continue like this, as I said, until all players have passed. Once that is the case, you have determined the order in which players will select their paths. For example, yellow, green, blue, and red in this example. Players have to pay the resources that they committed, and it's not just a matter of, oh, only the player that committed the most during the auction. No, everybody pays whatever it is that they have committed to pay. Then, in the order determined there, players resolve their cards. Starting from the left most of the path that a player has chosen, and then resolving the next one. As we said, the icons indicating the resources, you simply collect. Here I collect these resources and I solve that, and I simply resolve that path. Here I collect these resources and I also have resolved that path. The victory point I'll score at the end of the game. Let's talk about interesting stuff, which is when you have to fight. At some point, somebody will be stuck with the bad pass, the pass where fight is going to take place. To resolve a fight, so in this case, actually, first I resolve this card, take the resources, take the token, then I resolve this card, take these resources, and then I had to fight. I had to fight 4 zombies here, so I take my group of survivors, and I also place by it a number of zombies equal to, or walkers we call them these days, or differently alive, of zombies equal to the number indicated there, and you want to destroy those zombies. How do you do that? So by rolling dice. You roll dice for each survivor that you have. First, you get a chance of hitting at a range distance. Range combat is optional, and you need to spend ammo tokens to be able to perform range combat. For each ammo token that you discard, you can roll 2 dice. So suppose I want to discard 2, then I roll 4 dice. When you're rolling these dice, the only symbol that matters is this one. Is this one here? Well, of course, the crosshair symbol. This would also be this one. You ignore anything else that you see. Each crosshair is a hit and removes one of the walkers. Then you can, then if there are still walkers there, you have to fight melee. When you fight melee, again, you roll dice based on numbers of survivors that you have, and this time, however, more icons apply. Yes, the crosshair still means that you killed a zombie, and that is good. Blank result, nothing happens. You miss, but you don't get hurt. The skull result means that you take a casualty, one of your survivors dies, unless you spend an adrenaline token to deny that effect. Then we have the opportunity kill. It's usually a blank, but if you spend an adrenaline token, then you get to kill a zombie. And then we have, this is the regular kill of a zombie. And then we have the kill of a zombie, plus you get to kill a second one if you also spend an adrenaline token. And basically you continue like this back and forth during the melee until either you have destroyed all of the zombies or your group is completely eliminated. In which case, sadly enough, you're out of the game. This is a game that has direct elimination of players. Some cards later on are even harder than the ones on top. The deeper you go into the deck, the worse the stuff that you find. And so later you find the hordes. That hordes of zombies are represented by red symbols. You still had to fight against that number of zombies as indicated by the icon, but now a number of dice equal to the number of red skulls there will be replaced by red dice. So you roll your usual number of dice, but you mix the red ones with the black ones, and the black ones are simply more deadly because they also have this icon here, which is the casualty without a possibility of denying the casualty with an adrenaline token. The game continues until either there's only one player that has survivors at the end of the encounter phase, in which case the player is the winner of the game. If two or more players make it until the end of the trip, that is the end of the deck, then you count victory points that have been collected during the game. Also, there are at the end extra victory points that can be collected. Victory points for the player that has the most survivors, the most ammo, the most fuel, and the most adrenaline. These are worth 3 victory points each. Either is a tie for these cards, then nobody gets the card. In which case, after you have counted all of the victory points, the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. I like this game. I find it quite pleasant and entertaining. I like the decisions that you have and the two completely different levels of decisions that you have that are, however, interrelated because they're based on the same pool of resources. You have a level of decision that comes from the auction as you're trying to see what the opponents will do and how much they will go. And also then when you commit to a path, there's still decisions that you're making based on the resources you want to commit. You can choose to spend ammo or not. You can choose to leave a card or not because you can spend fuel to leave a path to resolve a card automatically, so you're simply running away, but in that case you do not get the card. That means that you are also forfeiting the victory points that may be present on the card. And turn after turn, round after round, there are interesting back and forths that come from the expenditure of resources and the crazy thing that happen on the board. However, there's a minor complaint that I have, a minor problem that I have, and I say it's minor mainly because there's an easy fix. So here's the problem that I see, followed then by my proposal for a fix. The problem is that when you have a leader, somebody that has gained a considerable advantage over the other players, it may be hard for the other players to catch up. Now, theoretically, the idea is that if you're the leader, you spent a lot of resources to get in that position, and so you're behind now because you spent a lot of things and the players may get a chance of acquiring resources. In truth, the problem is that if I have a lot of resources because I got lucky at some point, I can spend a lot of those to get onto paths that have a lot of resources, so I replenish my resources. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if you had each time paths that are, like some a little better, some not so much better, some fairly bad, but sometimes you have paths that are horrendous and paths that are excellent. So the player that already has an advantage right there, we spend a lot of resources, will gain the resources back from the cards, will not lose resources because maybe in that path there aren't any zombies, and players that were already behind and they got stuck with the dangerous path because they didn't have many resources, now they're gonna get even worse because they're gonna get eaten alive by the zombies. So there is this problem here of players with a lot of resources getting the best stuff and players with not many resources getting the worst stuff. And at some point, again, if you got a lucky round where you get that advantage, and then there is this constant configuration of like one excellent path and another bad path, then the leader will keep taking that one. It will be very hard for the other players to take it back, and the players cannot really gang up against the leader. So there is that element there. This being said, it may be that since the paths are random, you will not constantly have this situation of always one excellent path and other paths not so good, and so when there isn't such a large disproportion among the paths, then you may have the leader that will spend a lot to gain a small advantage. Other players will save some resources, will go through paths that are not that much bad than the one from the leader, and then the gap narrows. My proposal, my fix is to play with hidden resources. Because if you're a leader and say you have 4 resources and you see that everybody else has 4 or less, then all you need to do is to play exactly 4 And if you're the leader, you're the first player from the previous turn, you play exactly 4, and you know right there that no one can bid above you, no one can tie you, because the rules don't allow you to have ties in the auction process. So no one can be above you, and you spend resources, yes, more than anybody else to gain an advantage. The fact is that if you had hidden resources, if you're the leader, you may be tempted to squander some resources, to spend more than you need. If I see what everybody else, I know exactly what is the mathematically most efficient, unbeatable way of getting the best advantage with the minimal expenditure. With hidden resources, I may not know exactly if you have one more than me, if you have a lot more than me. Then I'm first. I want to keep my advantage, and I'm going to spend an insane amount of resources. And then looking at your bids, I realize, oh shoot, you guys had like only 2 or 3 resources left. I think that would add a lot, because that would add the temptation and the possibility for the leader to spend too much, and also there will be a moment of exciting in which the leader decides not to spend too much, and then somebody else turned out to have more resources saved up, and then that person will gain an advantage. Then even though you were the leader, that a person had invested a lot, then that person now gets in the good paths, and the person gets an advantage. It seems to me that the game is a little too straightforward if you have perfect knowledge of the resources that everybody has. So in the future, when I play this game, I will play with hidden resources, because that adds different levels of uncertainty, and it definitely minimizes the problem of the Uber leader that is very hard to catch once the leader starts running away from the pack. Overall, however, this is an entertaining game. This is a fun game. I enjoyed it. There are various ways of customizing it. If you find that the game is too long, it's not that short for a game that basically is so basic as we auction, resolve the cards, we auction, resolve the card. It's a little bit long, but doesn't overstay its welcome. But if you do find that that is a problem, then you can simply shorten it quite easily by reducing the number of cards in the deck of encounters that form the paths. Overall, fun and entertaining. It's a Martin Wallace design. It's a fairly solid design with some minor complaints that I have, but nothing that cannot be fixed. Overall, I find it entertaining and fun. I like the auction process. I like the theme. I don't see how the two go very well thematically. Maybe you're spending a lot of resources to reach the powerful, to reach the advantageous path before other people do. Thematically, the connection seems pretty weak to me, but however, mechanically it works. I like the fact that you can spend resources in one element, in one part, in one phase of the turn, and then supposedly you are left without many for the rest. But as I said, if the leader keeps getting the good paths, that doesn't really happen. Play with hidden resources. I think that the game will flow more smoothly, and there will be more interesting moments, more reversals of fate, more cheering as somebody that seemed to be the underdog turns out to be able to grab a good bunch of resources by taking the best path. I think it's a good game. I think it could be a little bit better than it had the way it has been released, but still a pretty fun game overall.